All right, let's talk about The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. It's a book built around one huge provocative question. Can you really get a world-class business education without that six-figure price tag and years of your life? We're going to find out. You know that feeling? That little voice in your head that says you're not smart enough, that you're just faking it, and you're about to be found out? Well, that's imposter syndrome. And the book says you don't need some fancy degree to shut that voice up. You just need to understand how business really works from the ground up. And that leads us to this, the book's central thesis, boiled down to just 5 words. This isn't just a catchy tagline. It's a full-on declaration of independence from a system that the author argues is, well, fundamentally broken. This is the idea that everything else we're about to talk about is built on. Okay, Section 1, the MBA trap. So to really get the book's philosophy, you first have to understand what it's pushing back against. Kaufman starts by totally dismantling what he calls the MBA trap. You know, the huge gap between what business school promises and what it actually delivers. Let's talk numbers, because this one is a real shocker. According to an analysis the book cites, the 10-year net present value of getting a top MBA is actually negative $53,000. Yeah, you heard that right. After a decade of supposedly higher pay, when you factor in the massive debt and the income you lost while you were in school, you're still in the hole. And you know, the book argues it's not even just about the money. The stuff they teach is often built for this old-school world of giant corporations, not for the fast-moving economy we live in today. And there's absolutely no guarantee you'll land that high-paying job. You're learning theory in a classroom when what you really need is hands-on practice. The result? You're often saddled with this crushing debt for an education that doesn't really deliver, which leads to what the author calls indentured servitude to your student loans. All right, Section 2, the 5 parts of every business. So if the old way is a trap, what's the alternative? Well, this is where the book lets us in on its big secret. It argues that every single business, no matter how complicated it seems on the outside, is really just built on a simple, universal foundation. This quote just cuts through all the jargon, doesn't it? At its core, a business isn't some mystifying thing. It's a process, it's repeatable, and it makes money. The second it stops being a repeatable, profitable process, it's not a business anymore. It's a hobby. Simple as that. And this right here, this is the core framework of the entire book. The argument is that every business, from the little coffee shop on the corner to a global tech giant, is just a mix of these 5 processes: value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, and finance. If even one of these breaks, the whole system crumbles. The real power here is just how simple it is. If you get how these 5 things work together, you can understand any business. Okay, Section 3, 3 powerful mental models. So how do you get good at those 5 things? The book's answer is what it calls mental models. Think of them as simple, powerful ideas that are like tools for your brain. They help you make sense of how business actually works. We're going to look at a few quick examples here, one for value creation, one for marketing, and one for finance, just to see how they work.
So let's start with value creation. The book actually lays out 12 different ways to create value, but the most basic, the most fundamental is the product. This is the classic business model we all know. You make a real, tangible thing, could be a car, could be a bar of soap, and you sell it for more than it cost you to make. Now for marketing, I love this quote from the book because it just perfectly captures a huge idea. If what you're selling is kind of boring or just like everything else, you have to pay this tax, and that tax is called advertising just to get people to look at you. But what if you could just not pay that tax at all?
The book's answer is the purple cow concept, an idea it borrows from marketing legend Seth Godin. And the idea is really simple. If what you offer is genuinely unique, I mean, as impossible to ignore as a bright purple cow in a field of normal brown ones, it becomes remarkable. People can't help but notice it, and they can't help but talk about it. It basically becomes its own marketing machine. And finally, let's peek at finance through this mental model of pricing power. So on one side, you've got a commodity, like toothpaste. There are dozens of choices for customers, right? So no single brand can really hike up its price too much without losing customers. That's low pricing power. But on the other side, you've got something super unique, like private space travel. There are very few alternatives, so the companies that offer it have incredibly high pricing power. It perfectly shows a key principle. Being unique gives you the power to set your price. So that brings us to Section 4. You are in control. All these ideas we've talked about, the 5 parts of business, these mental models, they're all leading up to the book's ultimate point. The goal isn't just to dump a bunch of business facts on you, it's to completely change your mindset and show you that you're the one in the driver's seat. So, what's with the number 12? This is a really fascinating point from the book. It says that most complex subjects aren't run by thousands of different rules. They're actually governed by just a handful of core principles, usually somewhere between 3 and 12. And what that means is that business, just like any other field, is so much more accessible than it seems. Mastery is totally within your reach. And really, that's the final, most important takeaway from the personal MBA. You don't need to ask for anyone's permission to become great at business. The knowledge is out there. The tools are available. As the book makes so clear, your education is truly in your hands. So the only question left is the one you see right here: what will you build?